I'm Leo. I'm 32 years old, and on what was supposed to be a magical family Christmas, my own mother looked my 11-year-old daughter in the eye and told her to get out. Before I tell you how I burned her perfectly crafted world to the ground in front of everyone, do me a favor and let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It helps to know I'm not alone in this. The message came through at 7:14 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Just 4 words on my phone screen. From my daughter, Lily. Can we leave now? My knuckles were white on the steering wheel of my rental car, the tires crunching over the freshly fallen snow on the winding mountain road. I was supposed to be heading back to my family's luxurious Aspen cabin after closing the biggest deal of my career. A deal that would secure my daughter's college fund and then some. I should have been ecstatic. Instead, a cold dread, colder than the Colorado winter air, was seeping into my bones. I typed back, my fingers clumsy. What's wrong? Sweetheart? The 3 little dots appeared, disappeared, and then reappeared. Finally, a new message popped up. Grandma said I'm not her granddaughter. She told me to get out. Something inside me snapped. The rage was instant, a white-hot flash that blotted out everything else. I spun the car around so fast the tires screamed in protest, spraying a plume of snow into the darkness. I was breaking every speed limit, the pine trees lining the road blurring into a solid green wall. That night, my mother would make 29 panicked phone calls to me. She would beg, she would plead, she would scream, "Please don't do this, Leo, please." And I would reply with just one line, "You'd better start praying." But before we get to the firestorm, we have to go back. Back to the moment it all started 3 weeks earlier, with a piece of heavy, cream-colored cardstock that landed in my mailbox. It was an invitation, an official, formally worded invitation from my mother, Eleanor, to spend Christmas at their home in Aspen. For me and Lily, it was the first one in 5 years. Not since my wife, Sarah, passed away. Lily found it first. Her eyes, the same warm brown as her mother's, lit up like a Christmas tree. "Dad, look, we're going to have a real Christmas. With everyone. A real Christmas." The words echoed in my head. I hadn't had one of those since I was a child, if ever. My childhood was a landscape of my mother's icy disapproval and my older brother, Daniel, the golden child, soaking up all the warmth. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me to throw the invitation in the fire. My mother didn't do anything without a motive, and her motives were never kind. But then I looked at my daughter's face, beaming with a hope so pure it physically hurt to look at. She had lost her mom. I couldn't bear the thought of taking her grandparents away from her, too. So I smiled, a brittle thing that didn't reach my eyes. "Yeah, kiddo, it looks like we are." And that was my first mistake. You have to understand, my mother, Eleanor, operates on a different plane than most people. Her world is one of appearances, of status, of control. She's the chairwoman of a prestigious Aspen charity, her picture often in the local paper, shaking hands with important people. Love, in her world, isn't a feeling. It's a transaction. And from the day I was born, I was a bad investment. I wasn't like Daniel. He was born to be a successor. He went to the right schools, joined the right fraternity, and now worked a high-powered job in investment banking, just as she'd planned. He was her polished reflection. I was different. I was quieter. I liked to draw and build things. When I announced I was going to be an architect, not a banker, you would have thought I told her I was joining the circus. It was a blue-collar, dirty-hands profession in her eyes. Unworthy. The memories are like a slideshow of 1,000 tiny cuts. My 10th birthday party. Daniel, who was 12, got a brand new Rolex. I can still see the way the light glinted off its gold band as my mother fastened it to his wrist, her smile radiant. "For my future CEO," she'd said. Then she turned to me and handed me a thin, wrapped present. It was a used book of architectural drawings. The cover was frayed at the edges. "I saw this at a thrift store," she said, her voice devoid of any warmth. "I thought of you." I remember looking from the shining watch on his wrist to the worn-out book in my hands, and for the first time I understood. I wasn't just the second son. I was the second-class son. My father, Richard, saw the look on my face. Later that night, he quietly slipped into my room. He was a good man, but a weak one, completely overshadowed by my mother's iron will. He put a hand on my shoulder. "She loves you, Leo," he whispered, though he didn't sound convinced himself. "She just has a different way of showing it." Then we heard her footsteps in the hall, and his hand dropped from my shoulder like a hot coal. He was gone before she even reached the door. That was my father, a ghost in his own home. Things only got worse when I met Sarah in college. Sarah was brilliant, funny, and full of life. She was a kindergarten teacher, and she saw the world in vibrant colors while my mother only saw it in shades of black, white, and gold. My mother despised her. To her, Sarah was an anchor, holding me back from some imaginary potential she had never acknowledged in the first place. When we got married, my mother wore black to the wedding. She told people she was in mourning for the future I had thrown away. The day Lily was born was the happiest day of my life. When I placed my daughter in my mother's arms for the first time, she held her for a moment, her face a mask of indifference. She handed her back to me and said, "She has your nose. A pity." After Sarah's funeral, they barely called. It was as if my small family unit, now broken, had been written off as a failed experiment. The inheritance of love and affection had been passed down, but my name, it seemed, was not on the will. So you see, this invitation wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a summons. It was a test. And I knew deep down that I was being set up to fail. But Lily's hopeful smile was a light in the darkness that had surrounded me since Sarah's death. I would walk through fire for that smile. And in a way, that's exactly what I was about to do. The week before our flight to Aspen was filled with a low-grade hum of anxiety. Started with a call from my best friend, Mark. We'd known each other since college, and he was the only one who truly understood the viper's nest I called a family. "Aspen? For Christmas?" he said, his voice laced with suspicion. "Are you serious, Leo?" "I'm doing it for Lily," I said, the phrase already becoming my mantra. "I get that, man, I really do. But you know your mother. She doesn't just invite people for Christmas. She summons them for a reason. It's a trap. Just watch your back." His words echoed in my head, a constant, nagging reminder. The trap was sprung a few days later, with a phone call from Eleanor herself. Her voice was like honey laced with arsenic. "Leo, darling, I'm so thrilled you and Lily are coming. I was just calling to coordinate. I do hope you've packed something appropriate for her for the Christmas Eve gala." The gala, of course. It was her crowning social event of the year, a massive fundraiser for her charity where she played the benevolent queen. "We have nice clothes, Mom," I said, my jaw tightening. "Oh, I'm sure you do," she purred. "It's just that the photos will be in all the papers, you know. Appearances are so important." She didn't need to say the rest. "And you've always been such a disappointment." Then she moved on to Lily. "And how is dear Lily doing in school? Is she keeping up? It must be so difficult for her, without a mother's guidance." Every word was a perfectly crafted dart, aimed at my weakest points. My role as a single father, my grief, my daughter. I felt the familiar rage bubble up, hot and useless. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her what a venomous, empty person she was. But what was the point? It would only give her the satisfaction. "Lily is doing great," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "She's the top of her class, and she had the best mother in the world for 7 years. She's fine." There was a chilly silence on the other end. "Well," she finally said, her tone clipped, "we'll see you on the 23rd. Then she hung up. The final warning came from the most unexpected source. My brother. Daniel sent me a text message the night before our flight. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't brotherly. It was a command. "Don't screw this up, Leo. Mom is in a good mood for once. Just try to act normal for a few days. For Lily's sake." For Lily's sake. He was using my own love for my daughter against me. The arrogance of it was breathtaking. He wasn't worried about me or my daughter. He was worried I would disrupt the perfect family portrait he and my mother had so carefully curated. He was worried I would be an embarrassment. I didn't reply. I just stared at the message, the screen glowing in the dark. Mark was right. It was a trap. And I was walking right into it, with my daughter's small hand held tight in my own. I packed our bags, making sure to include the nicest dress Lily owned, a deep velvet green that brought out the color in her eyes. I also packed the armor I had spent a lifetime building around my heart. I had a feeling I was going to need it. The Aspen house was exactly as I remembered it, a monument to my mother's taste and my father's money. It was a sprawling, modern cabin monstrosity of glass, dark wood, and stone, perched on the side of a mountain with a panoramic view of the snow-covered peaks. It was beautiful, expensive, and as welcoming as a bank vault. Eleanor greeted us at the door. She was dressed in a chic, all-white cashmere outfit, looking like an ice queen in her natural habitat. She offered me a brief, airlight hug that felt more like a physical rejection. "Leo," she said, her smile not reaching her cold, blue eyes. She then looked down at Lily, who was gazing up at her with undisguised adoration. "And you must be Lily. You've gotten tall." That was it. Not "it's so wonderful to see you," or "welcome, my dear granddaughter." Just an observation on her height. My father, Richard, hovered behind her, looking perpetually uncomfortable. He gave me a weak smile and a quick, clumsy pat on the back. "Good to see you, son." Daniel was there too, with his wife, Chloe, and their two kids, 14-year-old Ava and 12-year-old Noah. Daniel clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture that was supposed to look friendly but felt more like a power move. "Little brother. Made it in one piece, I see." Chloe offered a small, hesitant smile. She'd always seemed intimidated by my mother, a quiet presence who faded into the background. Their kids mumbled hellos, their eyes glued to their phones. The chill in the air had nothing to do with the weather. Later that evening, the welcome became explicitly unwelcoming. We were all gathered in the cavernous great room, a fire roaring in a fireplace big enough to stand in. My mother announced that dinner was ready. We walked into the formal dining room. A long, polished mahogany table was set for a feast. It was exquisitely decorated with pine boughs, glittering ornaments, and flickering candles. At each place setting, there was a small, elegant card holder with a name written in perfect calligraphy. Eleanor, Richard, Daniel, Chloe, Ava, Noah. I walked the length of the table, my heart sinking with each step. Then I walked it again. There was no card for Leo, and no card for Lily. Two empty chairs had been placed at the far end of the table, almost as an afterthought, with no place settings. Lily, sweet, innocent Lily, just assumed it was a mistake. "Dad, where do we sit? They must have forgotten our names." But I knew. My mother never forgot anything. This wasn't an oversight. It was a message, delivered with surgical precision. "You are here, but you are not one of us. You are guests, outsiders." I saw Chloe glance at me from across the table, her expression unreadable, before quickly looking away. I forced a smile for my daughter. "Don't worry, sweetie. We'll just sit right here. It's the best seat in the house. We can see everyone." I pulled out one of the empty chairs for her, my movements stiff. As we sat down, a silence fell over the table. Everyone was looking, but no one said a word. Not Daniel, and not my father. They just watched as my mother delivered her silent, brutal welcome. The feast had begun, and we were already the scraps. The next day was Christmas Eve, and the house was buzzing with a tense, artificial festivity. My mother was in her element, directing the caterers who were preparing for the gala that night, her voice sharp and commanding. Lily, bless her heart, was trying her best to soak it all in. She'd spent the morning trying to engage her cousins, Ava and Noah, who mostly ignored her in favor of their iPads. I was trying to keep her distracted, suggesting we build a snowman, when my phone rang. The caller ID flashed a name that made my stomach clench. Mr. Harrison. Mr. Harrison was the CEO of Harrison Holdings, a massive development firm. For the past 6 months, my small architecture firm had been in a brutal competition to win the contract to design their new global headquarters. It was a legacy project, the kind of job that could elevate my career into a different stratosphere. It meant a huge boost to my salary, enough to guarantee Lily's future and then some. It meant everything. "Leo, sorry to bother you on Christmas Eve," he said, his voice a low rumble. "We have a problem." My blood ran cold. "What's wrong, sir?" "The City Planning Commission just flagged an issue with the zoning variance. My team is panicking. Your main competitor, Jacob's firm, is already telling my board they have a solution and can take over." Jacob, of course. He was a ruthless operator who had been trying to poach this project from day one. "They're lying," I said, my mind racing. "The issue they've flagged is a simple fix, but it requires a specific modification to the structural plans. I have the files on my laptop." "My board is meeting in 2 hours," Mr. Harrison said, his tone grim. "If you can't get me revised schematics that address this before then, they're going to vote to go with Jacob. I need you, Leo. Can you handle it?" My heart sank. I was in a cabin on top of a mountain, hours from my office. "Sir, I'm with my family for Christmas." "I understand," he said, and I could hear the disappointment in his voice. "Family is important. It's a shame. You did good work." He was letting me go. This was my one shot, and it was slipping through my fingers. I looked over at Lily. She was now sitting by the window, watching the snow fall, looking small and lonely in that vast, opulent room. Protecting her, providing for her. That was my entire purpose in life. This project wasn't just about my career. It was about her. It was about proving to myself and maybe to the world that I could do it on my own. That I was enough for her. "Wait," I said, a decision solidifying in my mind. "Don't give it to him. I can do it. There's a small airport about 45 minutes from here. I'll charter a flight. I'll be in my office in 90 minutes. You'll have the plans." "That's a hell of a risk, Leo," he said, a new note of respect in his voice. "But that's why I hired you. Get it done." He hung up. My mind was a whirlwind. I had to leave. I had to leave Lily here in this house with these people. The thought was sickening. I found Chloe in the kitchen, overseeing the caterers. She was the only one who had shown me even a flicker of kindness. "Chloe," I said, my voice low, "I have a work emergency. It's critical. I have to fly back to the city for a few hours. Can you please just keep an eye on Lily for me? Make sure she's okay." She looked at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and something else. Pity, maybe. She glanced over her shoulder towards the living room, where Eleanor's sharp voice could be heard berating a waiter. She nodded slowly. "Of course, Leo. I'll watch her. She'll be safe with me." I trusted her. Or rather, I had no other choice. I knelt down in front of Lily, my heart feeling like a lead weight in my chest. "Hey, sweetie. Daddy has to go take care of something really important for work. It's for us. I'll be back as fast as I can. Okay? Before the party tonight." She looked crestfallen. "You're leaving. Just for a little bit," I promised, hugging her tight. "Be good. I love you. I love you too, Daddy." As I walked out the door, I took one last look back. Lily was standing at the window watching me go, and my mother was standing in the doorway to the dining room watching her. A strange, predatory smile was playing on her lips. I should have listened to my gut. I should have turned around, grabbed my daughter, and driven away forever. But I didn't. I got in the car and drove towards the airport, telling myself it was all for her. While I was in the air, hurtling through the winter sky, the trap was being set and sprung back at the cabin. I didn't see it happen, of course. I pieced it all together later, from what a tearful Lily told me, and from what a guilt-ridden Ava eventually confessed. It started subtly. With me gone, Lily was left to fend for herself. Chloe tried to include her, asking her to help decorate the cookies, but Eleanor quickly intervened. "Chloe, darling, don't bother the child," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "The staff can handle that. Lily, why don't you go read a book in the den?" It was a dismissal, plain and simple. So Lily retreated. She went to the guest room I was sharing with her and took out the special present she had been working on for weeks. It was a bracelet. She had spent her allowance on the beads, small, delicate stones in varying shades of blue, my mother's favorite color. She had painstakingly threaded them onto a silver chain, her small fingers working with intense concentration. She'd even attached a small silver E-charm at the clasp. It was her peace offering, her desperate attempt to win the affection of a grandmother she so desperately wanted to love her. She came downstairs, clutching the small, velvet pouch in her hand, her heart thumping with a mixture of excitement and fear. The family was gathering in the great room before getting ready for the gala. She walked up to Eleanor, who was sipping a glass of champagne and talking to Daniel. "Grandma," Lily said, her voice barely a whisper. Eleanor turned, her eyes sweeping over Lily with a look of mild annoyance. "What is it?" I made you something," Lily said, holding out the small pouch. "For Christmas." Eleanor didn't take it. She just stared at Lily's outstretched hand as if it were holding something distasteful. "You made me something?" she repeated, a cruel little smile playing on her lips. She looked at Daniel, a shared, mocking glance passing between them. Daniel, my brother, just smirked and took a sip of his own drink. He said nothing. "It's a bracelet," Lily said, her voice trembling now. "I picked out the beads myself." Eleanor let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't a sound of amusement. It was a sound of pure contempt. "Oh, you did you? How quaint." She finally looked Lily directly in the eye, her face hardening into a mask of pure, unadulterated cruelty. The words that came next were delivered with the cold, precise aim of an assassin. "Listen to me, child," she said, her voice low and venomous, so only those nearby could hear. "My granddaughter is the daughter of a successful, respectable man. She is not the offspring of a glorified construction worker who married beneath him. You are not my granddaughter." Lily just stared, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The little pouch fell from her fingers and landed softly on the thick rug. Eleanor wasn't finished. She gestured dismissively towards the hallway. "This is a family event. You don't belong here. Get out of my sight." Lily burst into tears, a heartbreaking sob that seemed to be ripped from her very soul. She turned and ran, stumbling up the stairs to our room. My father, Richard, who had been standing by the fireplace, flinched. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but then he looked at Eleanor's stony face, and he closed it again. He just stood there, a statue of cowardice, and did nothing. Ava, my niece, watched the whole thing, her face pale with horror. She looked at her father, Daniel, expecting him to intervene, to defend his own niece. But Daniel just swirled the liquor in his glass, took a long swallow, and turned back to his conversation with his mother. He had chosen his side. And it wasn't with an innocent, heartbroken little girl. It was with the monster who had just shattered her world. I landed back in Aspen as the sun was setting, casting a pink and orange glow on the snow-capped mountains. The meeting had been a resounding success. I'd not only fixed the problem but also identified a flaw in Jacob's proposal that would have cost the company millions down the line. Mr. Harrison had been ecstatic. He'd confirmed on the spot. The project was mine. The promotion, the salary increase, everything. It was the biggest professional victory of my life. I should have been on top of the world. But a gnawing unease had been chewing at me the entire flight back. I couldn't shake the image of my mother's predatory smile from my mind. That's when I saw the messages from Lily. The first one, then the second. My victory turned to ash in my mouth. Grandma said I'm not her granddaughter. She told me to get out. The world narrowed to a single point of focus, getting back to my daughter. I ran through the small private airport, shoved my way into a taxi, and barked my parents' address at the driver. The 45-minute drive felt like an eternity. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from a rage so profound it felt like it was going to tear me apart from the inside. This wasn't about me anymore. This wasn't about the snide remarks, the years of being second best, the constant, grinding disapproval. This was about my little girl. My innocent, sweet daughter who had done nothing but try to love a woman who was incapable of it. My mother had crossed a line. She had declared war on my child. And she had no idea that I was about to burn her entire world to the ground. I burst through the front door of the cabin without knocking. The house was quiet. The family was upstairs, getting ready for the gala. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my heart pounding in my ears. I found Lily in our room, curled up on the bed, her body shaking with silent sobs. The little velvet pouch with the bracelet was on the nightstand. I sat on the bed and pulled her into my arms. She buried her face in my chest and cried, "Great," heaving sobs of pain and confusion. "She hates me, Daddy," she whispered. "Why does she hate me?" "Sure no, baby no," I murmured, stroking her hair, my own voice thick with unshed tears of fury. "She doesn't hate you. She's broken. Something is broken inside of her. This has nothing to do with you. You are perfect. Do you hear me? You are perfect." We sat like that for a long time. As her crying subsided, I asked her to tell me exactly what happened. Every single word. She told me, her voice small and shaky. As I listened, a cold, calculated calm settled over my rage. This was not going to be a screaming match. This was not going to be a messy, private family argument where she could twist my words and play the victim. No, this was going to be public. This was going to be a demolition. I pulled out my phone. "Sweetheart," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I know this is hard, but can you tell me one more time? Exactly what Grandma said." Her eyes welled up with tears again, but she nodded. I hit the record button. She recounted the story, her child's voice cracking with pain. It was the most damning piece of evidence imaginable. When she was done, I stopped the recording and saved the file. It was my weapon. I looked at my daughter, her face tear-stained and pale. "Get your coat," I said softly. "We're not staying here tonight." "Are we going to the party?" she asked. A grim smile touched my lips. "Oh yeah," I said. "We're going to the party. And we're going to give them a night they will never, ever forget." We didn't go downstairs. I wasn't ready to face them yet. My plan was still forming, a dark and intricate blueprint taking shape in my mind. I called the front desk of the most expensive hotel in Aspen, the Little Nell, and booked the presidential suite for 2 nights, paying with the credit card that was about to see a very healthy salary increase. Step 1 was getting Lily out of this toxic environment. I packed our bags with quiet efficiency. Lily sat on the bed, watching me, her eyes large and shadowed. She was quiet, the bubbly energy that was so essentially her completely extinguished. Seeing her like that fueled the ice in my veins. As I was zipping up the last bag, there was a soft knock on the door. I opened it a crack. It was Chloe, my sister-in-law. She was already dressed for the gala in an elegant, dark blue gown. Her face was etched with worry. "Leo," she whispered, her eyes darting nervously down the hall. "I am so sorry. I heard what happened. I should have, I don't know, I should have done something." "It's not your fault, Chloe," I said, my voice flat. "You're just as much a victim in this house as anyone." She flinched slightly, as if my words had hit a nerve. "We're leaving," I told her. "We're not staying for the gala." This was a lie, but a necessary one. I couldn't let my mother know I was coming. Chloe's eyes widened. "Good," she breathed, a look of genuine relief on her face. Then, she did something that stunned me. She reached into her small, beaded clutch and pulled out a thick, manila envelope. She pressed it into my hand. "What's this?" I asked, my brows furrowing. "Your mother," she said, her voice barely audible. "She and Daniel have been meeting with the family lawyer. She's been making changes to your father's will, to the entire inheritance structure. She's been bragging to Daniel about it, when she thinks no one else can hear." I stared at her, my mind reeling. Inheritance? I hadn't thought about that in years. I had built my own life, my own success. I didn't need their money. "She's planning something for tonight," Chloe continued, her words coming in a rush. "At the gala. During her speech, she's going to announce a new philanthropic direction for the family trust. Something about consolidating assets. It's a way to publicly sideline you, to make you look like a charity case while she cuts you out completely. This might help you. I looked down at the envelope, then back at her. Chloe, why are you doing this? A look of profound sadness crossed her face. I'm tired of watching her destroy people, Leo, she whispered. And I don't want my daughter, Ava, growing up to be like her. Or my son to be like Daniel. She squeezed my hand, her eyes pleading. Just be careful. She's a cornered animal tonight. She's vicious. She turned and slipped away down the hall, as silent as she had arrived. I closed the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had thought my mother's cruelty was purely emotional. But this was something else entirely. This was cold, calculated, financial warfare. She wasn't just trying to hurt me. She was trying to erase me. The game had just changed. And my little plan for revenge had just escalated into a full-blown war. Once Lily was safely tucked away in a cartoon marathon in our luxurious hotel suite, with a room service order of a burger and a giant chocolate milkshake on the way, I sat down and opened the envelope. My hands were surprisingly steady. The rage had cooled and hardened into something sharp and focused. Inside were photocopies, legal documents. My eyes scanned the dense, jargon-filled pages. Amendment to the Palmer Family Trust. Fiduciary responsibilities. Beneficiary designations. And then I saw it. A series of clauses, carefully worded by a very expensive lawyer, that effectively redirected the entirety of my father's considerable estate into a subtrust managed solely by my mother and, upon her death, by Daniel. My name was mentioned only once, in a section that allocated a paltry, insulting stipend to me, contingent on my mother's approval. It was pocket change designed to be a leash. The final page was the signature page. My father's signature was there, looking a little shaky. And right below it, under the witness line, was the clear, confident signature of my brother, Daniel Palmer. He knew. He hadn't just stood by and let it happen. He had actively participated in stripping me of my birthright. He had signed the paper that was meant to disown me. The casual cruelty of him telling me to act normal for Lily's sake now seemed monstrous. All this time, they weren't just excluding me from their Christmas dinner. They were cutting me out of the family, legally and financially. I picked up my phone and called the one person I knew would understand. Mark answered on the first ring. "Tell me you're out of there," he said immediately. "I'm out," I confirmed. "But it's worse than we thought." I quickly explained everything. What had happened to Lily, the envelope from Chloe, the contents of the documents. Mark was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was grim. "So the gala isn't just a party. It's her coronation. She's going to announce her victory over you in front of the whole town." "Exactly," I said. "She's built her entire reputation in that town on the idea of family values. She's the great matriarch, the philanthropist. She's about to stand up on that stage and deliver a speech about love and charity, after what she did to her own granddaughter and her own son." "So what are you going to do?" Mark asked. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. It was the smile of an architect who has just solved a complex design problem. I knew the venue for the gala. It was a state-of-the-art ballroom with a massive digital screen behind the main stage, used for presentations. "She's providing the stage, the audience, and the spotlight," I said, my voice low and steady. "I'm just going to change the script." I spent the next hour on the phone with Mark, my partner in this clandestine operation. We laid out the plan piece by piece. It was audacious. It was risky, but it was perfect. My mother wanted a public spectacle. I was going to give her one. The ballroom at the St. Regis Aspen was a sea of glittering diamonds and fake smiles. Hundreds of Aspen's wealthiest and most influential citizens were packed into the room, schmoozing and sipping champagne. My mother's annual charity gala was the social event of the season, and she was in her element, gliding through the crowd like royalty, accepting compliments on the decor, on her dress, on her generosity. I had arranged for a trusted babysitter from the hotel to stay with Lily, who was fast asleep, exhausted from the emotional turmoil of the day. Before I left, I kissed her forehead. "This is for you," I whispered. I slipped into the ballroom through a side entrance, my simple, well-tailored black suit a stark contrast to the glitz around me. I kept to the shadows at the back of the room, an unseen predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. My heart was a steady, rhythmic drum against my ribs. I wasn't nervous. I was energized. I saw them at the head table. My mother, radiant in a silver sequined gown, holding court. My father, looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo, a polite smile plastered on his face. And Daniel, looking smug and self-satisfied, Chloe sitting silently beside him, her face a pale, tense mask. She met my eyes from across the room for a fleeting second, and I gave her the slightest, almost imperceptible nod. She quickly looked down at her plate. In the front row, I spotted Mr. Harrison. He was one of the event's main sponsors. He caught my eye and gave me a warm, congratulatory smile. He had no idea what was coming. After the dinner plates were cleared, my mother gracefully made her way to the podium on the stage. A hush fell over the crowd. The massive screen behind her lit up with the logo of her charity foundation. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice smooth and practiced. "When I look out at this room, I don't just see donors. I see a community. I see a family." I had to suppress a bitter laugh. She launched into a long, saccharine speech about the importance of legacy, of community, and, most nauseatingly, of family values. "Everything we build in this life," she said, her voice filled with false emotion as she gestured around the opulent room, "is meaningless without family. Our children, our grandchildren, they are our true legacy. They are the reason we do what we do. It is our sacred duty to protect them, to nurture them, and to provide for them." She paused for dramatic effect, placing a hand over her heart. "My family has always been my bedrock. My wonderful, supportive husband, Richard. My brilliant son, Daniel, who makes me proud every single day. They are my strength." She conveniently left me out. It was the setup, the public erasure, just as Chloe had predicted. She was winding down now, her voice swelling with her grand finale. And it is in that spirit of family, of securing a legacy for the future, that I am thrilled to announce a new chapter for the Palmer Family Trust. This was it. This was my cue. As she was about to deliver her killing blow, I stepped out from the shadows. I started walking towards the stage. I wasn't running. I walked with a calm, deliberate purpose. Heads began to turn. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Who was this man, striding towards the stage as if he owned it? My mother's eyes found me. For a second, a flicker of confusion crossed her face. Then it hardened into pure fury. Her monologue faltered. "Leo?" she hissed into the microphone, forgetting the audience. "What do you think you're doing?" I didn't answer. I just kept walking up the small set of stairs and onto the stage. I walked right past her and stood at the second microphone on the podium, the one meant for guest speakers. I turned to face the silent, baffled crowd. And then I looked at my mother, whose face was a thunderous mask of rage. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice clear and steady, amplified throughout the cavernous ballroom. The show was about to begin. The silence in the room was absolute. You could have heard a snowflake land. Every eye was on me. I turned my gaze from the crowd to my mother. "That was a beautiful speech, Mother," I said, my voice dripping with an irony that was lost on no one. A truly moving tribute to the importance of family. She tried to regain control, stepping forward and speaking into her microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please excuse my son. He's not been himself lately." "Oh, I've never been more myself," I said, cutting her off. I looked out at the sea of confused and curious faces. My mother talks about legacy, about protecting our children. I'd like to share with you all what Palmer family values look like in practice. I pulled out my phone. I had already sent the audio file to the A/V technician at the back of the room, a young guy I'd slipped $100 bill to with a simple instruction. When I nod, play the file over the main speakers. All of it. I nodded. Suddenly, The ballroom was filled with the sound of my daughter's small, trembling voice. And then Grandma said, "You are not my granddaughter." She said I didn't belong here. She told me to get out of her sight. A collective gasp swept through the room. People were turning to each other, whispering, their eyes wide with shock. I looked at the head table. Daniel's face had gone chalk white. My father looked like he was going to be sick. Chloe was staring down at her hands, but I could see a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. But my mother's face was a horrifying mask of incandescent rage. "How dare you?" she seethed into the mic, her voice a venomous whisper that was broadcast to every corner of the room. "How dare you use a child's fantasy to attack me?" "A fantasy?" I replied, my voice dangerously calm. "Is this a fantasy, too?" I gave a second signal to the tech. The charity logo on the giant screen behind us vanished. It was replaced by a crystal-clear image of the first page of the amended trust document. I used the laser pointer from the podium to circle the key clauses. "For those of you in the back," I said, my voice ringing with authority, "this is a legal document prepared by my mother's lawyer just last week. It's an amendment to my father's will. It effectively disinherits one of his 2 sons." The screen changed to the signature page. I highlighted Daniel's name, and it was witnessed and approved by my brother, the brilliant son she is so proud of. I guess when it comes to the family inheritance, some children are more valuable than others. The room erupted in a chaotic buzz of shocked whispers. My mother was sputtering, speechless, her perfect facade crumbling into dust right before the eyes of the very people she had spent her life trying to impress. Daniel shot up from his chair. "This is a private family matter," he yelled, his voice cracking with panic. It stopped being a private matter. I shot back, my voice like a whip. When my mother decided to make her philanthropic announcement, the centerpiece of this gala, it stopped being a private matter when you decided my daughter wasn't worthy of your love. You wanted a public spectacle, Mother. Congratulations. You've got one. Then the final, unthinkable thing happened. My father, Richard, who had been silent and invisible for my entire life, stood up. He walked slowly, unsteadily, towards the stage. He looked ancient, broken. He climbed the stairs, took the microphone from my mother's limp hand, and turned to the stunned audience. "My son, Leo," he began, his voice choked with a lifetime of regret. "He is telling the truth. All of it. It's all true." That was the final blow, the confirmation from her own husband. I saw Mr. Harrison in the front row. He stared at my mother with a look of utter disgust. Then he stood up, gave a curt nod to his assistant, and walked out of the ballroom. A dozen other prominent guests followed him. The exodus had begun. My mother stared out at the dissolving crowd, her empire of lies turning to rubble around her. She had lost everything, in a matter of minutes, on the very stage she had built to celebrate her own glory. I leaned towards the microphone for one last statement. "Happy Christmas, Mother." Then I turned, walked off the stage, and didn't look back. This is the moment that changed everything, the moment I finally took back control of my life and my daughter's future. Thank you for sticking with me this far. You're amazing. If you could do me a huge favor and like this video and comment with the number 1 below, it lets me know you were here with me through the storm. It really helps more people find this story, and it lets me know that sharing these experiences matters to someone. Your support is the biggest reason I can continue to share the rest of this journey. The aftermath was exactly as chaotic as you'd imagine. I didn't stay to watch the whole thing burn. I walked out of that ballroom with my head held high and drove straight back to the hotel, the adrenaline slowly being replaced by a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. My phone started blowing up before I even got to the room. Local news reporters, former family friends, and, of course, my family. I ignored all of them. I went into the suite, saw Lily sleeping peacefully, and just sat in the dark for an hour, listening to her breathe. That was my victory, her peace. The next morning, the story was everywhere. The Aspen Times ran a front-page story with the headline, "Charity Queen Dethroned in Holiday Gala Shocker." My mother's perfectly curated image was shattered beyond repair. The board of her foundation called an emergency meeting, and by noon, she had been forced to resign in disgrace. The empire she had spent a lifetime building was gone in less than 24 hours. My first visitor was Daniel. He showed up at my hotel suite, his face a mess of anger and desperation. He didn't knock, he pounded on the door. I made him wait, then opened it just enough to block his entry. "What do you want, Daniel?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "What do I want?" he sputtered, his eyes wild. "You've ruined us. You've ruined everything. The family name is Mud. My partners at the bank are calling me. My wife has packed a bag. All because of your selfish little drama." I just looked at him, truly looked at him, maybe for the first time. I didn't see a brother. I saw a hollow man, a coward who had traded his soul for his mother's approval and a fat inheritance. "My selfish little drama?" I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. "You stood by and watched our mother emotionally torture my 11-year-old daughter. You signed a piece of paper to help her steal my half of our father's legacy. Don't you dare talk to me about family names. You don't know the meaning of the word." Just then, Chloe appeared behind him, pulling a suitcase. Ava and Noah were with her, their faces pale and scared. She walked right past Daniel as if he wasn't there and stopped in front of me. "Is there room for 3 more for breakfast?" she asked, her voice trembling but resolute. Daniel whirled around. "Chloe, what are you doing? You can't be serious. You're choosing him." She finally looked at him, and for the first time, I saw fire in her eyes, not fear. "No, Daniel," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I'm choosing my children. I'm choosing to get them away from you and your mother before they end up just like you." It was a declaration of divorce, right there in the hallway. He just stared, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. He had lost it all. His wife, his kids, his reputation. He looked at me one last time, his face filled with a pathetic, impotent rage, then turned and stormed away. I opened the door wider and let Chloe and her children inside. The old family was dead. Maybe, just maybe, a new one was beginning to form from the ashes. Before we left Aspen, there was one last conversation I had to have. My father called me that afternoon. His voice was weak, raspy. He asked if he could see me, alone. I agreed to meet him in the hotel lobby. He looked 10 years older than he had 2 days ago. The life had been drained out of him, leaving behind a frail, hunched figure. We sat in 2 armchairs by a cold fireplace, the silence stretching between us. "I have no excuse," he finally said, his eyes fixed on the floor. "For all of it. For your whole life." I stood by. I watched her whittle you down. I told myself it was just her way. I told myself I was keeping the peace. He looked up at me, and his eyes were filled with tears. "But there's no peace in a house without love. Is there? There's just silence." I was a coward, Leo. I was so afraid of her, of losing the comfortable life she provided, that I let her hurt my own son. And then, I let her hurt my granddaughter. A single tear rolled down his weathered cheek. When I saw that little girl's voice on the screen, heard her voice, I finally saw the monster I had been living with. The monster I enabled. I didn't know what to say. The anger I had held for him for so long was gone. It had been replaced by a vast, empty pity. "I'm so sorry, son," he whispered. "For all the years I stayed silent." I took a deep breath. "I hear you, Dad," I said. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It was too soon for that. But it was acknowledgement. It was a start. "I appreciate you saying it, and I appreciate what you did on that stage. That took courage." "It was 30 years too late," he said with a bitter laugh. "Yeah," I said. "It was." I stood up. "We're leaving now, Lily and I, and Chloe and the kids are coming with us for a while, until she gets things sorted." He nodded, not surprised. Give them my love." "I will," I said. As Lily and I walked out of the hotel and into the bright winter sunshine, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying my whole life. The snowy peaks of Aspen no longer looked like a beautiful prison. They just looked like mountains. We got in the car, and I pointed it east, towards home. We were leaving the ghosts of Christmas past behind us, finally free. The next 6 months were a blur of change and reconstruction, both literally and figuratively. Chloe and her kids stayed with us for the first 2 months, a chaotic but surprisingly warm and healing time. My 2-bedroom apartment became a loud, messy, laughter-filled refuge. We were a strange, cobbled-together family, united by our shared escape from the toxicity of Eleanor and Daniel. Chloe eventually found her own place nearby, filed for divorce, and we settled into a new normal of shared dinners and weekend outings. Daniel, from what I heard, had become a pariah at his firm and in his social circles. He tried to call a few times, leaving angry, rambling voicemails. I never listened to them. I just deleted them and blocked his number. My father started writing letters. Old-fashioned, handwritten letters on plain paper. They weren't pleas for forgiveness. They were just updates. He told me he and my mother were separated. He had moved into a small condo downtown. He was going to therapy. He was learning to cook. They were simple, quiet letters from a man trying to find himself at the age of 65. I never wrote back, but I read every one. Professionally, my life exploded in the best way possible. The Harrison Holdings project was a massive success. It won awards. My little firm was suddenly on the map, and job offers were pouring in. The promotion and salary bump were even bigger than Mr. Harrison had promised. With the money, I bought a piece of land in a quiet, green suburb and started designing a new house for Lily and me. It wasn't a mansion like the Aspen cabin. It was a house designed for living, not for showing off. It had huge windows to let in the light, a big open kitchen for chaotic pancake breakfasts, and a small art studio for Lily, who had discovered a passion for painting. It was a home built not on a foundation of stone and secrets, but on a foundation of love and safety. One afternoon, I came home from a site visit to find Lily sitting at our small kitchen table, a familiar set of beads and tools spread out before her. She was humming to herself, carefully threading the small, blue stones onto a new silver chain. My heart caught in my throat. It was the same design as the bracelet she had made for Eleanor. "What are you making there, sweetie?" I asked, my voice gentle. She looked up and gave me a smile so bright and confident it nearly knocked me over. It was the smile I had been so afraid was gone forever. "I'm making a bracelet," she said simply. "Oh yeah? Who's it for?" She held it up, the blue stones catching the afternoon light. She had just attached a small silver L charm to the clasp. "It's for me," she said, her voice clear and proud. "Because I know my worth." In that moment, I knew she was going to be okay. We were going to be okay. The cycle of pain, the legacy of conditional love that had haunted my family for generations, had been broken. It ended here, with her, with us. We were building our own legacy now, one bead, one brick, one day at a time. One warm Saturday in late spring, as the finishing touches were being put on our new house, Chloe and her kids came over for a barbecue. It had become a weekly tradition. Mark came too, and we were all in the backyard. A chaotic, happy mess of laughter, sizzling burgers, and a half-finished game of badminton. As I was flipping burgers, Ava, my 14-year-old niece, came and stood quietly beside me. She had been reserved since the Aspen incident, and I'd tried to give her space. "Uncle Leo?" she said, her voice soft. "Hey, Ava. What's up?" She fidgeted with the sleeve of her shirt. I wanted to say I'm sorry." "Sorry for what?" I asked, looking at her. "You didn't do anything." Her eyes filled with tears. "That's why I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "I stood there. I saw what Grandma did to Lily. I saw it and I didn't say anything. I was scared, and I've felt awful about it ever since." Before I could respond, Lily, who had overheard, walked over and took Ava's hand. "It's okay," she said. "You were scared. I was scared too." Ava looked at her, shocked. "But she was horrible to you." Lily shrugged, a gesture of profound, unchildlike wisdom. "Yeah, she was, but it wasn't about me, and it wasn't about you. It was about her. She squeezed Ava's hand. Now we know what family really means. It means you don't have to be scared. Ava threw her arms around Lily and hugged her tight. I looked over at Chloe, who was watching them with tears in her own eyes. Our eyes met, and we shared a smile of pure, unadulterated relief. This was healing. This was what it looked like. Later that evening, after the kids were inside watching a movie, Chloe and I were cleaning up. You know, she said, handing me a plate. For years, I watched Eleanor do to you what my own father did to me. I stopped what I was doing and looked at her. What do you mean? My dad was a tyrant, she said, her voice distant. Everything had to be perfect. My grades, my friends, my appearance. Love was always conditional. I spent my whole life trying to earn it, and I never did. When I married Daniel, I thought I was escaping. But I just married into a different version of the same family. I saw Eleanor treat you with that same cold, transactional disapproval, and it terrified me. I just froze. I became that scared little girl again. It all clicked into place. Her silence, her fear, and finally her rebellion. In Aspen, she continued, her voice stronger now, when she did that to Lily, it was like watching my own childhood happen to someone else, and I just couldn't stand by and let it happen. I couldn't let my kids grow up thinking that was normal, that it was okay. You saved us, Chloe, I said quietly. That envelope, it changed everything. She shook her head. No, Leo, you saved yourself. You just needed someone to finally hand you the tools. We stood there in the fading twilight, the sound of the kids' laughter drifting from the house. A cobbled-together group of broken people who were learning how to be whole again. And I realized family wasn't about blood or last names or inheritance. It was about showing up. It was about standing in the fire with someone, and for someone. It was about choosing to build something new and better, together, from the ashes of the past. It's been a few years now. Our house is no longer new. It's a home, filled with the nicks and scratches and memories that make a place truly yours. Lily is a teenager now, a whirlwind of paint-splattered jeans, loud music, and fierce opinions. She's kind, she's confident, and she knows her own worth down to her very bones. She never has to wonder if she is loved. She just is. Chloe and her kids are thriving. She went back to school, got her landscape design certificate, and now runs her own successful business. Ava is in college studying to be a social worker. She wants to help kids who grow up in difficult homes. She turned her pain into her purpose. My father and I have a quiet, tentative relationship. He visits a few times a year. We don't talk much about the past, but we don't have to. His presence is his apology, and my open door is my acceptance. He's a doting grandfather to Lily, in a way he never could be a father to me. It's not perfect, but it's real. I never heard from my mother again. I heard through the grapevine that she lives a quiet, isolated life. Her friends abandoned her, her status is gone. She's just a lonely old woman in a big, empty house full of ghosts. I don't hate her. I don't feel anything for her at all. She's just a stranger I used to know. Sometimes, when I'm sitting in my office, sketching out the plans for a new building, I think about the blueprints of our lives. The ones we're given, and the ones we draw for ourselves. For so long, I felt trapped by the blueprint my mother had laid out for me. One where I was always going to be a disappointment, an afterthought. But what I learned that terrible, wonderful Christmas is that we all have the power to tear up the old plans and draw new ones. We can demolish the structures that were built to contain us and build something beautiful in their place. My life's work is creating buildings. But my life's purpose, my real legacy, isn't made of steel and glass. It's the feeling of safety and love within the walls of our home. It's my daughter's laughter. It's the knowledge that I broke a chain of pain and replaced it with a legacy of love. And that's a foundation that will stand forever. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member to protect yourself or someone you love? Share your story in the comments below. And please don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what I have to share next.